Give me as loud as you're gonna be.
I don't know. Sometimes I go up here.
Oh, not that bad. Okay. So, alright.
Alright.
Whew. Okay. Wipe the sweat off my brow. Oh, got the vapors. Oh. Hun chow.
Alright.
What? I'm a little rusty. I haven't done this in a minute.
We haven't. Well, how many months has it been? Not months.
Weeks. We did it. The last one we did was with Vanessa.
Okay.
Yeah. That was like middle of May.
Alright.
So now we're in middle of June.
Now we're in the middle of June, which is Pride Month.
Oh, you're putting you got it.
No!
You got it the wrong way round.
Pride.
Hit me with some of that air. Oh, ooh, fresh air. All right. Welcome, folks, to Cinema Double Shot. I'm Wallace McKelvey, a journalist and filmmaker, and you might recognize my partner in crime, my partner in gay crime today. Introduce yourself.
I'm Josh Dorsheimer, and I'm the only other gay person that he's ever had on this show. So there we go.
Is that true?
Oh no, I've derailed it already.
Yeah. I mean, you might be true. I don't know.
Anyway, no. I was saying that I'm qualified for this episode. That was what I was trying to say.
So today on Cinema Double Shot, we're going to talk about our favorite queer cinema in history. Because it is Pride Month.
Woohoo!
I mean, never mind, it's the middle of Pride Month, and by the time this is up on, all the various podcast platforms and on YouTube, there'll probably only be 1 week or two left of Pride Month, but that doesn't matter.
That's not true.
Fine.
A good majority, I imagine, of your audience is from Harrisburg, and Harrisburg celebrates Pride Month in July.
Very true.
So
very true.
There we go.
All right. So we're going to talk queer cinema. Woo! But first, I feel like we should probably talk a little bit because a lot has happened since the last episode.
Yeah.
It's been a whirlwind of filming for River City Stories, which every weekend for the last 2 months almost, we've had some kind of filming going on for our really deliriously wonderful film project.
And ambitious film project.
And very ambitious.
But Walls, I'm not sure I know what River City Stories is all about. Could you please explain to me what River City Stories is?
Why, I would be delighted to explain what River City Stories is. So, River City Stories is a series of interconnected stories, all based around a small Rust Belt city, Harrisburg, but with universal stories about all the interesting people who inhabit this place and the way that their lives come together and then diverge again. And part 2 of River City Stories, for all of my friends out there, will be screening as part of the Harrisburg Fringe Festival in July. And let me get my bifocals out so I can read my tiny print here.
Your focals will buy.
Bifocals.
Yay!
That means they swing both ways. River City Stories will be screening at Midtown Cinema. Shout out to our Midtown Cinema friends.
Woohoo!
We
watch a lot of queer movies, by the way.
We did. Yeah.
We went to a whole queer film festival.
Did we see Rope there?
We did not see Rope there, but we saw gay horror shorts. We went to a gay, film festival. They do, every so often we saw John Waters' movie there. They're cool.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, we love our friends over at Midtown Cinema. Support your local art house theaters, folks, no matter where you are, whether it's Harrisburg or Lancaster or Philadelphia or Pittsburgh or anywhere across this beautiful country of ours. But in Harrisburg, you can see the next chapters of River City Stories, which will eventually be a feature-length film later this year or early next year. there, and it is July 17th at 6 o'clock, July 18th at 8:20 p.m., and July 19th at 5:45 p.m.
Also, there, one of the shorts this time around in River City Stories features a queer couple at the forefront of the story.
Yes, it does. Home features a lesbian couple who
Yay!
are trying to find their first home in this crazy real estate market. Yeah.
Excellent.
But I hear tell you also have a big production coming up as part of Harrisburg Fringe Festival.
Where would you get a crazy idea like that?
You want to plug that?
I am writing and directing a fairy tale play for families with queer themes based on the Cinderella story. And it's got queer characters, trans characters, all sorts of fam and actors as well. And it's going to be lots of fun, and it's totally G-rated, so there's nothing you can bring. You can bring grandma, you can bring the kiddos, you can bring, you might not want to bring some of your conservative relatives, but...
I mean, heck, just bring them
bring 'em
anyway.
all.
Listen.
But that is going to be at the Grace UMC Church in Harrisburg during the Harrisburg Fringe Festival.
Yeah.
And our dates are Thursday, July 17th at 6 p.m., the same time as the first screening of River City, so we are competing for audiences here.
Grrr.
Saturday, July 19th at 4:30, and Sunday, July 20th at 3:30. Come. It's a lovely, wonderful group of actors who are just fantastic. I got all of my first choices for each of the characters.
Did.
So that
Cinderella
never happens.
Cinderella has a stacked cast.
So I'm so excited because I've never had that happen.
And
every single person said yes, I want to do this, and I was like, woohoo!
I will also point out a lot of overlap with River City Stories.
Yeah, we have a lot of the same cast.
And I've gotten to witness some of their rehearsals firsthand. In some cases, because I'm like, I'm sitting in and filling a part for various actors who aren't there, and really, the Cinderella is going to be fantastic.
And so is River City Stories. It's going to be wonderful.
Whoop whoop.
Awesome Fringe.
And also, like, shout out to Bree, who is organizing the Harrisburg Fringe Festival and doing a lot of hard work here. There are so many wonderful productions happening over the course of this festival. So go out and support the local arts here. Yeah. But without further ado, let's dive into queer cinema.
Woo! We're gonna keep doing that.
Woo!
It's like the word of the day on Pee-wee's Playhouse. Queer cinema is gonna be the secret word.
So what was the first time that you saw a movie and, spoiler alert, we're both gay and
what?
And we're partners.
What?
Surprise!
And we have a child.
Oh, and we just adopted a kitty cat who is not currently here because she doesn't like bright lights and lots of noise.
She's just like me.
We just adopted a kitty cat named
Mystery. Wallace likes to call her
Miss.
And I call her Misery, like Kathy Bates sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yes, we're gay and we have a cat child, which makes us even gayer.
But what was the first movie that you watched where you're like, they're gays. This is the thing.
Well, the first one that I can remember was the movie Mrs. Doubtfire. And I have a very specific story because I remember exactly when I learned that these characters were gay in the story. For those who have not seen Mrs. Doubtfire, it's an interesting film. Definitely interesting rewatching as an adult. But the plot is that it's directed by Chris Columbus, and it has Robin Williams playing a divorced dad who wants to babysit his kids, but his ex-wife is saying, not until you get a job. and he decides that his job is going to be to dress up like an elderly woman and pretend to be his wife's nanny. Which is funny, but also watching it as an adult is like, ugh.
Yeah, and like the Robin Williams character is clearly not gay.
No.
But cross-dressing is like gay adjacent.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
And specifically the person that helps him don this persona of Mrs. Doubtfire is his hair and makeup artist brother.
Harvey Fierstein.
Harvey Fierstein.
Quite possibly the gayest man on the planet, this side of John Waters.
I adore Harvey Fierstein. And I remember watching this movie as a kid, and Harvey Fierstein has a partner who is helping him and is in his house and is helping get Robin Williams, ready to go be this old lady for the family. And later on, when the kids ask, hey, who did this to you? Robin Williams says, Uncle Frank and Aunt Jack. And watching it with my grandmother, I said, oh, I didn't know that was a woman. And my grandmother said, it wasn't. Aunt Jack is a man. They're gay. They're together. And I was like, what? That's a thing?
You did a double take.
I was like in kindergarten when I saw this movie.
I saw Mrs. Doubtfire when I was a kid as well. When I was a really little kid. And I have to say, probably the first few times I saw it, the gayness of the uncles went way over my head. Like, way over my head. I'm sure at some point I registered that was what they were, but, like, probably not the first time I saw it. And I'm pretty sure I saw it in the theater when it came out, because I was a big fan of Aladdin. And arguably, Aladdin also has some, like, queer undertones to it, right? Because, like, Aladdin turns into a woman, but, like, in that opening sequence.
Aladdin does?
Yeah. Doesn't Aladdin, like, come out in, like, a belly dancer outfit and all that?
Oh, he does when he's hiding!
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
But, so my like, gay movie kind of anecdote from when I was a kid is, like, I grew up in a conservative... conservative is not really the right word for it. I grew up in a freaking weird family. And, it was very obvious that being gay was not okay in my family. So there was always a kind of hesitance to, like, to show or like, have, any kind of culture that was, like, remotely gay or queer or any of that jazz. So, believe it or not, like, Mrs. Doubtfire was okay as long as we didn't talk about the gay uncles.
Yeah, that was how it was in my family, too.
But I remember when I was a little bit older, and this is when I was probably, like, 11 or 12 or something, I watched the remake of the Birdcage.
Yes!
Which... came out in like '96, and I saw it on TV. It was on like TBS or something, and I remember when I was watching it. I grew up in a trailer, a mobile home, if you're highfalutin, and there was a long corridor leading to my room. My parents' room, mercifully, was on the other side of the trailer, and mine was on the exact opposite side of the trailer. And I remember watching it on TV, and this probably was like 98, 99 or thereabouts. And every time I heard a creaking down the hall, where I was like, oh, my mom's coming, I would change the channel. It was one of those, like, forbidden things. The Birdcage for me was like, ooh, it's scandalous. Which, that movie is one of the most chaste gay movies you can imagine from that time period, especially the version they aired on cable TV.
Well, I imagine they cut a bunch of stuff out when it was on TBS.
But just by virtue of there being queer people in the Birdcage, like
out queer people,
where it's like okay, and the whole point is like trying to get to a point where you're accepting of gay people. But for me, I remember, like, and my mom, had this habit where she would, like, float back and forth through the house like a ghost. Partly because the personal computer, our house's computer, was in my room, so she would, like, hang out in my. It's a whole thing. But I remember every time I heard someone down the hall, I would switch the channel because, God forbid, someone found out I was watching the Birdcage.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. That's a.
What a way to bring down the mood.
No, it's important though. That's like a foundational part of your queerness.
It is.
So it's like kind of a downer, but that's.
It's also just life.
Yeah.
It's the reality of being gay for many queer people. Various people on the LGBTQ plus spectrum have this experience. If you grow up in a certain type of family, you have to you for your own safety, for your own peace, there's very much an imperative to not be open about it.
Yeah.
And that extended to movies.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny because, like, being a movie fan, whenever I encountered something that was, like, a little gay or had, like, a lesbian relationship or, even just, like, you know how old Hollywood movies had this habit of, like, having queer-coded people?
Yeah.
Or in the example of, like, the Cary Grant in Bringing Up Baby, where he's like, he's has to wear a woman's robe, and his explanation, I've just gone gay all of a sudden. I kind of clung to those little bits of gay culture that I could find, as like, oh, this is interesting, and you do what you can. Yeah.
Absolutely. I did something very similar. I have a whole presentation about it, but the characters I tend to cling to that were queer-coded as a kid were villains. And that's why I developed into just a spooky boy. But very similarly, I liked that ooky spooky stuff, and often they would sneak kind of overly queer characters, but you just didn't say that they were queer.
Yeah, Which that might be a good segue into some of our top picks for queer cinema.
So one of my favorite movies of all time is a film by Alfred Hitchcock called Rope. And while in Rope the characters are not. Let me go back and explain what Rope is in case folks have not seen it. But it is like my second favorite Hitchcock film. First of all, he filmed it like a stage play, which was really, really cool. And it is this thriller about two gentlemen, handsome gentlemen, who live with each other and have a sassy maid who decide, for the thrill of it, they're going to kill one of their classmates and see if they can get away with it. And the whole film is them seeing how far they can go whilst they have the corpse of this person in their chest. These characters, the handsome gentleman living together with the sassy maid, in the film they're queer coded. This is where I want to, but watching it, there's no, they never say the word.
Yeah.
But
it's kind of understood. Like, everything about these two characters would tell you, from like a modern perspective, oh yeah, they're gay. And they live together.
And everybody just treats it like the whole plot is like, oh, after the party they're going to go away on vacation with each other. Mm-hmm. Who goes away on vacation with each other except for partners? And all the characters are just treating it like it's normal. Like, they're like, oh, well, you two are going on vacation. Well, have a great time after this. So it's interesting because in the world that this takes place in, it's not a big deal that these two are gay or coded gay. The big deal is that they've killed a man.
Yeah.
But
and they're the evil aspect of the crime has nothing to do with their gayness, which I find I thought was really smart.
Yes.
And really kind of like modern of this film. It's just because they're terrible people who just happen to be very coded gay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't even like they're just straight up villains.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And they're unapologetic villains, which is I think it's fun because like again, it's not related to their queerness. They're just evil, and they're fun and over the top. And I know this is terrible, but I almost want them to get away with it because they're so entertaining. And one thing that I absolutely love about this movie, and why it would kind of, I clung to these queer characters, but it's based off of a stage play, which I have directed and acted in. And I like the stage play, but it's not nearly as good as the film. In the stage play, now they don't relate the murder to the guys being gay, but they do state they're gay.
Well, and it is inspired by the true crime case of Leopold and Loeb. And if I'm not mistaken, Leopold and Loeb, they were kind of younger. They were like teenagers, weren't they?
They were like young college age students.
Oh, okay.
But
they were gay. Right?
They were lovers. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of them was more invested in the relationship than the other, which is kind of how the movie is too. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
But what I love about Arthur Lawrence wrote the screenplay, who is gay also for Rope, and even though they cut out all the text from the play, I think it made the movie far gayer. There is a scene in this film that doesn't happen in the play, where the two men are discussing the murder of this person, and they are basically just like...
How did you feel during it?
I didn't feel anything at all until his body went limp, and then I felt tremendously exhilarated. It's so gay. It is so gay.
Hitchcock was a weird dude.
But he loved his gays. He loved his gays.
He did. I mean, there's Rebecca, obviously.
Strangers on a Train.
And there's Strangers on a Train. And Norman Bates is not a transgender person in the way that we think of a transgender person. Norman Bates was just psychotic.
Yeah.
But there's, once again, cross-dressing in Psycho.
And there's just a whole theme of sexual repression. I could do a whole thing about how I think Psycho is queer, but just not in the way that people see it. But
scattered throughout the Hitchcock filmography are many, many, many flavors of queer people and queer-coded people.
And played by queer people.
Yeah, in many cases played by queer people,
the two men...
like Farley Granger.
The two men in Rope were both bisexual, so he was hiring queer people to play queer people, which is kind of revolutionary for the time.
Well, along these lines, one of the ones that I wanted to bring up, and we didn't really talk too much about the movies that we were going to highlight, but we decided that we're going to try to go for ones that are a little bit off the beaten path, and so there won't be too obvious picks. But number 2 was we wanted to try to avoid movies where the gay people die. Like there's this trope in so many movies, kill your queers. Yeah. And while there are some good movies where queer people, we can die too.
Yeah.
But
I mean, we're all going to.
We wanted to avoid kind of the cliche. There are so many saccharine Hollywood movies where, Yeah. And this is Pride Month. This is a time for joy.
Yeah, let the queers murder somebody.
Exactly. So another out of the way, and this one's actually pre-code. So this is before the Hays Code that Hollywood adopted that put in a lot of restrictions, which Hitchcock found his way around
Yes,
nonetheless.
he did.
But the Hays Code really put the kibosh on a lot of queer depictions in cinema. Prior to 1934, there actually was a lot of sex and innuendo and even queer things.
Yeah.
There were several Hollywood movies featuring prominent gay actors and gay characters prior to 1934. One of them where it's not explicitly gay, but is like has a lesbian relationship in it that is really interesting, and I think deserves to be seen by more people. Is a movie called Babyface from 1933.
1933.
And it's got one of my favorite actresses, Barbara Stanwyck.
Barbara Stanwyck.
And the basic plot of Babyface is Barbara Stanwyck plays this up-and-coming, modern woman who moves to New York and decides that she's going to sleep her way to the top.
Heck yeah!
Yeah, I'm there for it. and that is the whole plot, but there's an interesting subplot where she has this best friend / maid / companion who is a woman and helps her on her various as she moves through these various men. And it's funny, the relationship with the kind of best friend / maid character is so much more fleshed out than any of the relationships with the men. Barbara Stanwyck's character goes through the men in the film like they're tissues, because she's just trying to get what she can from it. Now there is some moralizing in it because Hollywood can't help itself, but it's a really fascinating early example of queerness, even if it's coded and not said explicitly, tucked away in an old golden era of Hollywood film.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I have not seen it, and you're talking about it. You talked a little bit about it before we got on here, and now I'm like, I need to see this film. 1933 with Barbara Stanwyck. I'm putting it in my letterbox.
Yeah, Babyface.
Babyface. Excellent. Well, we're going a little out of order.
That's okay.
I guess there's not really
I figured you give one and then I'll give one, and the one that I give will be like somehow thematically similar.
Well, since we're going off of queer coding, I'm going to continue because I have one more on my list that kind of goes into queer coding, and then I have my explicitly queer movies. Don't worry. But another one of my favorite films that is considered to be a gay film, particularly by folks in the horror community, is a movie called Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. Freddy's Revenge.
Which is actually your favorite Nightmare.
It's my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street too. And I know that it's so controversial among people, but they decided to not do a sequel to the original film. Like, they didn't take any of the characters except for Freddy Krueger, and somehow, you get mixed opinions and messages about how this came about. But somehow through the writing, the direction of Jack Shoulder, and the performance of the main character, who is the Scream Queen in this one, is a male, played by Mark Patton. Some combination of that. There's some folks who are like, oh, it was intentional. Oh, we did it by accident. Oh, and I think it's a little bit of column A and column B, because the story, essentially, is using Freddy Krueger as a metaphor for being closeted. That is Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. This character believes that Freddy Krueger is trying to get inside him and kill people. There's a whole scene where he's about to kiss his girlfriend and Freddy Krueger comes out of his mouth. He runs to his hunky best friend's house and climbs in bed with him.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Steamy.
Yes. And there's actually a scene that takes place in a gay leather bar. It's It's really gay.
They knew what they were doing.
They knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help. It does help that Mark Patton, the actor who played the lead in the film, is in fact gay. I really find it interesting because as somebody who uses horror as like an escape from the horrors of real life, to see a movie that sort of depicts how horrific being closeted is, and how it is like a literal living nightmare. I love it. Love the film. The poster is hanging above my bed. It is, he's holding his girlfriend, but in the mirror he's actually looking at Freddy, and it says, "The man of your dreams is back." And I'm like, that is the gayest horror poster. I want it. I want it in my house. One other thing, I would be remiss if I didn't recommend the companion piece to Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, which is a wonderful film called Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street, and it's a documentary about Mark Patton and his journey through a whole bunch of trials and tribulations as a queer person, while also celebrating his career in film and celebrating the role that horror plays in the lives of so many queer people. So definitely check that out too. Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah. I'm going to go with one that is not at all coded.
Bring it!
Sidney Lumet, classic Dog Day Afternoon.
Yes!
The bank robbery movie. But the queer character is played by John Cazale. Mm-hmm. And there's a moment, so Al Pacino, his bank robber, tries to pull off this really half-assed heist at this small bank in like Brooklyn or something. And it ends up with a hostage crisis. The police are there, the TV crews are there. And in many ways, it's a beautiful portrait of what New York City was like in the 1970s.
It's so cool.
Sidney Lumet just masters the atmosphere of the city. But there's this sequence where they bring down the Al Pacino character's partner, played by John Cazale, and it turns out that this person is what we today would call transgender. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason for the heist, there are many reasons, but part of it is Al Pacino in a kind of, again, harebrained, not quite fully thought out way, is trying to raise money for his partner's sex change. And it's in some ways, like, it hasn't aged the best, but in other ways, it's also quite tender and sensitive. And, my reading of the film, John Cazale's character is not played for laughs.
No.
It is deadly serious, and there is you can get a real sense of the love between these two characters in a way that, a lot of films featuring transgender characters from that era and earlier, transgender people typically played some kind of villain, or they were played as the comic relief.
Yeah.
John Cazale's character is neither. He's neither the villain. He's, in some ways, John Cazale's character is the voice of reason. Yeah. That character is trying to talk down his partner, and also not really a subject of ridicule. If I remember correctly, there is some like non-PC language used. And
it was also the 70s.
But it was also the 70s,
yeah.
And it was also a time when that language would have been used in that kind of situation.
Yeah.
And John Cazale, obviously not a transgender person himself, but I thought he played that character with a real warmth and respect, and it's not the kind of depiction that you expect from a film from that era. And it's surprising, and it's tender, and I think it did a service in 1974 when that film was released.
I agree, and I only saw it recently. I saw it with my friend Jeremiah in like 2019, and when he first described me what the plot was, I was like, a little nervous what this is going to be like. And I watched it, and I thought it was surprisingly sweet. And there was no point where I was not like, yeah, Al Pacino, go. Like, again, one of those movies where you're, even though they might be doing something against the law, you're still rooting for them because at the heart of it, there's something very sweet. Speaking of trans characters, it's not part of my little list here, but I just wanted to give a shout out to my favorite film from last year, which is I Saw the TV Glow. One of my favorite films from last year. I Saw the TV Glow, and I really appreciated the meshing of horror, surreal elements, and the story of, again, being closeted. It had a lot of the same things that I liked from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, but in this case, they were dealing with a trans character. Not on similar films, I don't think. But,
yeah, and I Saw the TV Glow also grapples with the fallout of being, living inauthentically.
Yeah.
There are consequences to that, and I think that film handles that very sensitively.
Yes.
So, what's your number 3?
Well, so related to this, a movie that I really like that takes that narrative of I'm going to be closeted and my life is going to be terrible, and it just fucks with it. It fucks with it. Is a movie called But I'm a Cheerleader. It is one of my favorite movies. It was a very must have watched this movie dozens upon dozens of times, like late high school, early college. Director Jamie Babbit, and in it, for folks who don't know, it is a film about a girl who has pretty much a normal life. She's a cheerleader and she's got the hunky football boyfriend, but secretly she shows these signs of being a lesbian, and nobody in her town likes this, including her parents. So they decide to have this intervention and send her to a conversion therapy camp. Plot twist: the movie's a comedy. It sounds like it's a very dark comedy, but it's so smart because it takes something horrible like conversion camp, but it like totally takes the power away from it by making it absolutely absurd and empowering these gay characters to kind of rise up over these folks. And it's got some great inspired performances from Natasha Lyonne and Clea DuVall playing lovers in this, which is, first of all, fucking hot. I'm gay, and I will say that. But also, Kathy Moriarty is a hoot. She's the head of this thing called True Directions, and she's the head camp counselor, and she's like channeling her best like Disney villain. And my favorite bit of casting in this movie is that one of the villains, one of the evil camp counselors, is an acting debut from RuPaul Charles, who is not in drag, and he is playing a straight man. Yeah. And it is so funny. Because there are moments where you're like, oh yeah, he's ex-gay. But like, just seeing RuPaul not in drag playing this villain, this awful character, it's funny. She said she was inspired a lot by John Waters, and you can tell because there's just so many influences. And she got a couple of his actors. Mink Stoll has a fun supporting part as Natasha Lyonne's mother. But yeah, must have watched that movie probably once a week when I was like a freshman in college. Wow. I loved that movie.
Yeah, I'm gonna go a little heavy with my next pick,
that's all right.
Which is Barry Jenkins' Moonlight, which I think is pretty close to a masterpiece. And it speaks to a little bit of what we were talking about, where the psychic toll that being closeted can play on you. And it follows this one boy becoming a man. in 3 separate chapters, growing up in, this in the outskirts of Miami, Florida, and growing up in a household where it's not okay for him to be gay. His mom has some issues with that, but he finds this, kind of solace in this uncle and aunt figure, who kind of take the boy under their wing, and just like, it's not as much explicitly said like, oh, you're gay, but they see something in him and they give him a place where he can simply be. And that safe space is really important. We as young queer people, we don't often get safe spaces, and that whole segment there with the boy and his uncle played by Mahershala Ali, and his aunt played by Janelle Monáe, is just magical. But there's so many sequences in this film, and it's a triptych that are really magical. Similarly, there's a scene at the end of the film where he, now finally in his, like, I'd say like mid-20s or so, he's grown up, and he is reconnecting with someone that he met in the adolescent chapter, who is also gay, and they have this really beautiful scene at a diner, and this beautiful song plays, and they just have a moment together, and it's Moonlight is I feel like I'm just kind of rambling, but
No.
but Moonlight is just this beautiful depiction of what it's like to grow up repressed and to have to steal moments of safety for yourself and cling to them, and some of the consequences, because it shows this kid as a young boy, as an adolescent, and then as an adult. You get to see how the evolution takes place over time, one sequence after another, and I love that film. It's not necessarily an upbeat film entirely, but it's also not a kill your queers film,
And
it's beautifully shot, beautifully acted, everything about it. Moonlight, and heck, it won the Oscar for Best Picture. So
I still haven't seen it.
what?
I know.
I could tell when I was describing it, you couldn't see it. You haven't seen it.
No.
What the heck?
I know. I was listening. You're telling me about it, and I was excited. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, anyway, this would be a new film for you.
I know. I'm like updating my letterboxd as we like sit here and talk, because now I have 2 movies that you have mentioned that I need to see. I've been meaning to see Moonlight. Would you ever be up for watching it?
I own it. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
all right.
Let's stop the podcast and watch it right now.
All right.
All right, your next pick.
And now we're back. No. So, a lot of people, when they're growing up, and especially when they're like weird, from my understanding, a lot of my friends who are queer, they have a movie that is like foundational to them, just like deciding to let loose and be as weird as they possibly can.
As weird as you want to be.
Yes. And that movie is a very popular midnight film called The Rocky Horror Picture Show. That is not the film I'm going to talk about, though.
Plot twist.
I like Rocky Horror a lot.
Yeah.
But I had a different movie or set of movies that did that for me. And those, I would say, the filmography of John Waters.
The whole filmography.
I mean, I watched.
All right, you're not going to be able to go through every
No.
movie.
I'm going to pick one because I'm going to talk about the gateway into John Waters. But I mean,
Yeah.
like, as soon as I learned who he was and what he was doing, that was like the kind of thing that I watched secretly when I was like a teenager, and also like early college. Female Trouble and Serial Mom and all of his Desperate Living. However, I learned who John Waters was because when I was in high school, I went to see Hairspray, the musical, on Broadway. And when I realized it was based off of a film, I had to go to the video store and rent out the original Hairspray. And holy cripes was I so excited by this movie. I love the musical. The musical is beautiful and bright, but it's grungy.
Mm-hmm.
It's very John Waters, but it's like a family John Waters movie. He calls it his Trojan horse movie that he was able to so Divine, his muse who was in all of his early films, the drag queen Divine, he played a housewife, a mother. All these other movies he played Jane Mansfield crossed with Godzilla, but in Hairspray, he plays a normal housewife, and Jerry Stiller plays his husband, and they just have scenes where they hold hands or they're sitting on the couch together, and he snuck in. And people show this movie at birthday parties and with kids.
The musical version is really popular in high schools.
Yeah,
including conservative ones.
Yeah,
yeah.
He snuck in, and it's a great story too. Though it is about
is very wholesome.
It's about how a fat girl befriends a black boy, and they basically kind of. Use being ostracized as a way to storm a television studio. She's like, you're gonna pay attention to me even though you don't like me for my size, and he's like, we're gonna integrate this studio that is now segregated. So it's a really wholesome, sweet story, but you have all the hallmarks of John Waters in it, so it's so cool, and I love that movie. And Divine holding hands with Jerry Stiller caused me to go, I need to go find more of these queer movies that John Waters did. And that's how I found Pink Flamingos.
Yeah.
And his trashier stuff. But I love Hairspray. And the musical's great too. Harvey Fierstein, who we mentioned earlier, plays the Divine character, and he's great in the Broadway show.
Yeah. Well, my next one is another one where I think it is, it's outrageous, but it's also, I think, very wholesome and has ultimately a really, as complicated as the story is, it is ultimately kind of an uplifting and empowering film, and that's Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Yes.
By John Cameron Mitchell.
Yes.
Which, shout out to our friends at Open Stage in Harrisburg.
It was so good.
They did a fantastic musical version of this story. But the film follows this character who is, it has a kind of interesting identity, in growing up in Germany. Clearly a queer kid, befriends this American GI, and through a series of mishaps ends up going through half of a gender reassignment surgery. Isn't completed. Ends up in the States, gets abandoned, a bunch of things happen, but still holds on to the hope and yearning for love. And one of my favorite songs and performances, Wig in a Box.
Put on makeup. 30 seconds.
Yeah, we can't sing the song. But check out Wig in a Box from Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Check out Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
The whole movie, yes. It's a beautiful song. It's a beautiful film. And really just simultaneously really funny and raucous, but also kind of wholesome and empowering and empathetic.
Yeah. I have a funny story about Hedwig real quick if
you make it real quick.
I actually didn't like that film the first time I saw it. I did not like Hedwig. I thought they were kind of I couldn't like their character because I thought they were so angry and it was upsetting to me. And then a year ago, I went to go see it again with Rachel and Gibby after rehearsal and saw it in the movie theater. And I guess it was just where I saw it when I was like younger. But seeing it in the movie theater with them, I cried.
Mm-hmm.
I cried. I loved it so much. I cried. So yeah, I would. It's definitely an interesting film.
I would say so. I saw Hedwig and the Angry Inch when I was in college, and that was, several years after it had first come out. I didn't see it right away, but it really did. I think I cried the first time I saw it myself, and I saw it, when I was a safe distance away from my family.
Yeah.
When I was at college, and in some ways it was one of the experiences I had where I was like, you know what? Fuck it. It's okay to be me. Whatever I am, it's okay to be me. And that is the experience of watching Hedwig.
Yes.
No matter who you are, no matter what your gender identity is, your sexual orientation, that is a movie that you can watch and, it does something. It tells you that you're okay no matter who you are, no matter what's happened to you.
Yeah. And that's on film and on stage. It was just as effective.
Well, yeah. Well, the film was inspired by a stage production that started as like a cabaret act.
Yeah.
A combination like comedic cabaret, and then John Cameron Mitchell like expanded on it and expanded on it and expanded on it. It eventually became a stage musical first.
Yeah.
Then he adapted it for the screen, and then since then it's continued to live this life on all sorts of community theater and on Broadway and so forth. So what's your last pick?
So my last pick for this list we've already mentioned earlier in the podcast. So I'm just
spoiler.
I'm going to loop back to it, I guess.
Yeah.
And it is The Birdcage.
Yeah.
Very similar to you, there were two movies that I used to rent out from the library very secretly, and I would watch them. I also lived in a mobile home. My mother didn't pace up and down the hallway, but I still, it still was like I need to. My parents are cool now, but at the time it was like
at the time they were less cool.
They were less cool.
Yeah.
And one of them was this movie called Maurice, which we're not going to talk about because that's a heavy film.
It is a very heavy film.
It's a very heavy film.
Yeah.
But the other one was The Birdcage, and I must have watched The Birdcage so many times. My brother used to tease me about how much I used to watch The Birdcage. But I love that film so much.
Yeah.
Because there's just a lot of love in that movie. But also it is supremely funny. It takes this premise. So for those who don't know the plot of The Birdcage, it is based off of La Cage aux Folles, which is a French film. Similar plot to that film. Basically, the son of a gay couple wants to marry the daughter of a conservative politician, and it's kind of like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner a little bit, and they have to they think that they have to hide his parents' gayness from this conservative senator, and farcical things ensue, and it's quite funny. And you have Robin Williams and Nathan Lane, who are both great improv comedy actors. I just hit my mic, sorry. Both improv comedy actors, hysterical. And then you have these wonderful comedic performances from Gene Hackman and Diane Wiest, who you don't often get to see play these comedic parts. There's a whole, spoiler alert, sorry, this movie's been out since 1996, right? You get to see Gene Hackman in drag, rest in peace.
Yeah.
And it's so he's so funny. He's so funny. And it's not it's not like, oh, look at him, he's dressed as a woman. Like, the part that's funny is that a conservative senator decides that he's going to loosen up and have fun dressed as a drag queen. And dances with, like, a man at one point. And you call these movies warm bath because there are stakes, but every time the stakes get high, you laugh about it, and by the end of the film, you know, it's cute. And it just, that was a movie that felt safe and made me feel like things were going to be okay whenever I watched it.
Yeah.
What's your last pick?
My last pick is director Sean Baker, who just won a slew of Oscars for the movie Anora. It's a movie he made back in 2015 called Tangerine. And Tangerine is, once again, it's a movie that is like, it straddles that line between heartfelt and batshit crazy bonkers. It is about, at its core, the friendship between two transgender sex workers on the streets of Los Angeles over a single day. One of them learns that her boyfriend has been cheating on her, and there's a lot of like really interesting subplots that you get to explore various aspects of their lives. You know the life of one of their Johns and the relationship that they have together. And you know, one of the women is an aspiring singer, and you get to see her, you know, one woman performance at this seedy bar in downtown Los Angeles.
Seedy bars. I love seedy bars in gay movies.
but there's lots of stuff going on, but at the core, it's really just about two friends living life together and you know, having disagreements and fights and then coming back together. And it is, in my mind, Tangerine is a warm bath film as well. And one of the things I love about it is very frankly sexual, because obviously, like, they're two sex workers. So there is some amount of sex, and there is some comedy in it as well. But it's also just a story about two people. And I love that, the way that it is, it can shine a light on like a culture that most of America tries their best to ignore and not see. But it's also just a story about people. And once again, like, these characters, you know, while there is comedy to them, some of the things that happen are quite absurd. The car wash sequence, I'll just leave it there. If you have issues with, like, if you're a little squeamish about human sexuality, Tangerine may not be the best film for you, but it's in my mind, it's never exploitative, and it is in fact very tender and warm-hearted in all of its ways. So yeah, I don't want to spoil it. But there's so much to say about the movie Tangerine.
That's all right. You've already sold it to me. It's going on Letterboxd
and
again.
I think the Maya Taylor should have been the first transgender actress to be nominated for an Oscar. She should have been nominated for an Oscar for her performance.
No controversy on
in
that.
Tangerine, but alas, you know,
Hollywood
had to settle for a Wally instead.
Well, Wallies are very important, as we have established on this show already.
Yeah. So, any final thoughts?
I have 2 lightning round questions for you.
Okay.
All right. Lightning round, because I
Lightning.
don't know where we at. Where we at?
We're about to trip over an hour.
Oh, that's fine. When you were looking at that clock, I thought we were like running to 2 hours. I was like, Jesus, it's the Pride Month episode, Wallace. We can be
be as loosey goosey as we want to be.
We can talk about as many gay things as we want because it's important. This is queer history.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm going to sandwich these because one of them's depressing.
Okay.
You mentioned not wanting to talk about a kill your gays movie.
Yeah.
However, there are some really good kill your gays movies, unfortunately, and I wanted to know if there is one that you like.
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. Oh man, I wish you would run this question by. Well,
I did.
What's your favorite kill your gays movie?
I wouldn't say favorite, but I had one recently that I really liked, and this is going to be a spoiler for a movie that came out last year. So pause if you don't want to hear anything about All of Us Strangers. I loved All of Us Strangers last year with you're gonna have to help me. Andrew Scott and
yes,
Paul Mescal.
And Paul Mescal.
Thank you.
Yep.
In that film, the gays are in fact very dead.
Spoiler alert! If you haven't seen,
I already said that.
Yes.
Yes, I already said that. I already said it. The gays are very dead, but it's not a kill your gays movie because they don't die during the movie. And I love it. It's a ghost story. It's a ghost story. Wallace, it's a ghost story.
It is, in fact, a ghost story.
And it's a love story. It's a gay ghost love story. And it's sad. It's sad, but like they find each other in the afterlife. And so many of these gay movies where you kill off the queer characters at the end, there is no ending like that. You don't get to think about them in the context of, maybe they're off in the afterlife getting some in some purgatory hotel room. And All of Us Strangers does that. It starts out with the gays already dead. But they are finding love again in the afterlife. And I don't know. I don't know how you felt about that movie, but
yeah, I wasn't quite as taken with it as you were, but I appreciated it, and I guess the thing that I appreciated about it most was that the Andrew Scott character goes, the basic premise of it is somehow he's able to go back in time and meet his parents
and come out to them.
In a way that he wasn't before. And I found that element of it quite touching. Yeah.
Well, I think, and the reason I like it so much is I think it undoes some of those harmful things that they have in films. So, like, by being a ghost, he is able to go back in time and see his ghost parents and come out to them. And he is able to reunite with his partner who overdosed, not partner, but the guy he was seeing who overdosed, and everything's okay, and he can hold him and protect him, and it's like he's being protected by his parents, and he can go and protect his partner. It's like ghosts getting to protect one another. It's very I think the movie's very sweet. So that's probably my favorite kill your gays, because they don't get killed. It's the premise of the film is that they're already dead. So, that's mine. I
had to refresh my memory a little bit.
I saw you.
Yes. So I did a little cheating so I could find I knew I had a couple movies in mind, but I didn't want to forget.
That's all right. I have notes too.
Yes. So I would say, so if I have to pick a bury your gays or kill your gays movie that I can truck with is A Single Man. Have you seen this one?
I have not seen A Single Man.
Lay
it on me.
This is actually directed by the costume designer, fashion designer extraordinaire, Tom Ford.
Huh.
It was his first movie as a director, and it's got Colin Firth as a grieving single man who his gay partner has just died, and the family of his partner is really nasty to him, and he's kind of going through his life in, I think it's 1960s Los Angeles. So being a Tom Ford movie, it is visually sumptuous. Lots of beautiful set design and costumes and lighting, and It just has it all, including a really great supporting performance by Julianne Moore as his best gal pal. It is almost pointedly bleak. It is not a fun watch.
Oh, no.
It is. I would not say A Single Man is the best movie that you can watch for Pride Month.
No.
But if you force me to pick a kill your gaze movie, I think it's quite good and quite sad, and I'm probably overdue for a rewatch.
All right.
When I saw that movie when it first came out in 2009, I was agape. I was astonished by how beautiful it was, despite being, as I said, grindingly bleak.
Grindingly bleak.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to check that out when you do the rewatch.
Yeah.
But I will also have to make sure that I have my uppers and my. No.
Just don't confuse your uppers and your poppers.
Oh, I'm not that gay. Last lightning round question. Is there a character? Was that offensive? I just realized from your laugh. I was
Point.
Is there a... I originally was going to ask, is there a coded character that you latched onto in a film? But I can expand it to not coded as well.
A queer coded?
A queer coded character that you latched on.
Oh, gosh. That's another great... Why don't you give yours first while I think about it?
Mine's kind of silly.
You go for it.
Dr. Pretorius in Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh, yes.
I love him. I love him because he's like, you don't want to go do that boring heterosexual stuff with your wife. Come with your best guy pal and make monsters with me. You can make children a different way. And that's a trope that carries over into so many mad scientists. My favorite mad scientist, Herbert West, in the Re-Animator films, is also very much like Dr. Pretorius. Maybe not as much as a mincing queen, but very same premise where he's like, let me drag you away from your beautiful girlfriend and come down into my basement with me to make monsters. Here, I'm going to give you a literal heart. Like when we first talked about doing this as a potential episode, I thought like Bride of Frankenstein would be a natural one to talk about. Yeah, and that was my way of this is my way of getting to talk about Bride of Frankenstein. But I also want to hear what your answer is. Yes, I love Bride of Frankenstein.
Well, I mean there are a lot and especially in old Hollywood, you kind of had to skirt the censors. But one, and we just recently rewatched this, but The Maltese Falcon.
Oh.
The Maltese Falcon has several queer-coded characters.
I was going to say, do you identify with Joel Cairo?
No. Is this me identifying with them?
Oh, I was saying, which character were you smitten with? Which character were you taken in by?
Oh,
who enticed you?
like what I was attracted to
no,
sexually?
Just not no. Just like somebody you identified with, somebody that you were like, oh, this character's coded, but I can get behind what they're saying.
Oh, well, in that case, I mean, there's an obvious answer. It's the Little Mermaid.
Oh,
right?
That's true. So Ariel.
No.
Which character? Oh, Ursula.
Ursula.
Sorry.
I mean, Ursula in The Little Mermaid is just like a hoot.
Yes.
She is having the time of her life, and she has magic and minions and can give you exactly what you want. And will also take your soul in the process. And has a wonderful villain song with Poor Unfortunate Souls. And it's just like, Ursula is living her best life.
Yeah.
I'm not that person, but to live vicariously, in the skin of Ursula for a movie, That's pretty great.
So basically, you just want to be a drag queen with tentacles.
Exactly.
Oh, they would love that in Japan.
And I'm pretty sure, like, I'm pulling this out of my behind, but I'm pretty sure they probably modeled Ursula on Divine.
No, they did.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, they did. So Howard Ashman and Divine were friends, or he might have been friends with John Waters. But either way, they were actually having trouble designing her because at first they were making her like this thin, like angelfish, and like I had a book that had like all the previous designs of her, and then finally he was like, "Well, why don't you try to make her look like Divine?" And she does. She's got the hair. She's got the like there are literal outfits that you could show side by side.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about this is that there's a behind-the-scenes making of Little Mermaid on the special edition Blu-ray, and it's about like the making of the movie. And they talk about it. And John Waters is in this documentary for 2 seconds because it's in an interview chair. They cut to him after they say, "Oh, they based off Divine." He goes, "Oh, I know. Isn't that sick?" and that's the only time he appears in the documentary.
So wait, they spliced him into the documentary just to have a reaction shot?
No, like they interviewed him about it, but like they only used one bit of it, and it was him saying, "I know, isn't it sick?" and it's like shot the same way. It's not like archive footage, anyway. But yeah, Ursula's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. What about Ariel is gay?
No, see,
Ariel's not gay at all.
Well, no, the original Hans Christian Andersen story about wanting to like become something different and join the human world. A lot of people say is very queer code. And I wasn't sure that you were going to pick a villain because it didn't have to be a villain. So I wasn't sure that you were going straight to. I pick villains because that's where I naturally gravitate to it. But I'm quite surprised that you picked a villain.
Yeah, Ursula, who's very clearly queer coded, is pretty great. Yes. Is living her best life, and I love her.
Body language.
Yes. Now back to Maltese Falcon.
Oh yes.
I mean, I thought of that because it's got kind of like a clique of queer coded people.
Yes.
Who are all like aesthetes and they love art, and the whole plot is about finding this thing that this like bust, the shiny bust, and it's ridiculous. The Maltese Falcon, the plot is ridiculous, but it's one of the only ones where there's a whole underworld of queer people who are conspiring against the Straits, and it's never explicitly stated per se in the script, but it's delightful.
One of them is Peter Lorre.
And Peter Lorre, who made a career out of queer-coded, like, minion types.
And that's okay.
I love him.
I accept him. I accept him as one of us just because he seemed like a hoot. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Those were my lightning round questions. Do you have any for me?
No. I think we should wrap.
Wrap it up before you tap it up.
So, one last plug for Cinderella.
Cinderella. I mentioned the dates earlier. I don't remember them now, but you can find them. It's July 17th at 6 p.m., July 19th at 4 p.m., and then July 20th at 3:30 p.m. And you can get your tickets and your button. Don't forget your button.
Don't forget that button.
You need the button.
You need the button
to see all the other. You also need the button to see River City Stories, which
River City Stories is July 17th at 6 p.m., July 18th at 8:20 p.m. I'm sorry. Wait. I'm going to rewind the tape there because I think I just got the dates wrong. River City Stories, which is July 17th at 6 p.m., July 18th at 8:20 p.m., and July 19th at 5:45 p.m.
Hooray!
At Midtown Cinema in Harrisburg. We're going to debut a whole new slate of stories in what will eventually be a feature film that we're working on right now. And also, just come out to Harrisburg Fringe if you're anywhere in the Pennsylvania region.
It's also
It's
incredibly
delightful.
queer.
So many of our friends are doing stuff. It is diverse in every sense of the word in terms of the people who are participating in it, the types of works they're creating. You've got music, you've got film, you've got musical, you've got comedy, you've got improv, you've got band performances and plays and children's plays, and it's just a warm vibe.
Warm vibe.
Last year the Fringe Festival was a very chill, warm, friendly, inviting place, and it will be again this year.
Yes, come join us in the warm, friendly, inviting place.
And no matter who you are, be kind to yourself and be kind to others, especially this Pride Month.
Happy Pride, everybody.
Much love. Bye-bye.